Hey everyone, Derek Hines here. Welcome to the podcast where I'll share with you the patterns, insights, research, and technologies that we use in my own pain and performance practice to help people improve their health, speed their healing, and increase their longevity. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, my friends. So on today's podcast, I have Anjan, and he's the founder of a company called Daylight Computers, and you'll hear about the kind of origin story of that company. But the real kind of topics that I was excited to get into with Anjan is our relationship with technology and our addiction to technology, what that does to us, how that changes us biologically and mentally, and what we can do about it. And I think if you use a device, this is a great conversation to maybe open some new neural networks on where devices should lie in our lives and how we should think about devices and how we use them and everything under the sun with that topic. So please enjoy this conversation. It was really, really enlightening. I love talking to Anjan. He's a very thoughtful guy. I think you're really going to appreciate his thoughts around this, especially for somebody who is a technology CEO. So please enjoy this conversation with Anjan Kata. It's fantastic. All right. Anjan, welcome to the Pain and Performance Podcast, my man.
Thanks for having me on, Derek.
This is always kind of one of these weird things whenever we start looking at like humans and technology and where we're at today. I think it's we're like kind of starting to get closer and all of our lives are integrated with it. So it's a weird thing. I'll start this with a little bit of a story. My wife and I take a trip every February. And one of the things we do on this is like look back at our calendar of like the last year. And we're like, what things gave us energy? Like what activities, what trips, any of that type of stuff. And what things took energy from us. And one of the things we've realized the last like probably 3 or 4 years was that the trips that we took where we just went and like kind of got away from everything, we weren't on our phones, we just like we're in a cabin in the woods, we come back from those trips way more energized than like a trip where we go to like, so London's one of our favorite cities. We'll go there and it's awesome, love it. But you come back and you're almost like, I need a vacation from the vacation, right? And so we started being aware of that, like, oh, the trips where we're on devices less and around TVs less and around computers less and around cities less seem to give us a bit more energy when we finish them. So certainly whenever I came across your stuff, I was like, okay, we got to dive into some of this.
I think that's the funniest part here is like you meet some of the best technologists in the world and they spend as much time as possible away from technology, in nature, going camping, backpacking, whatever, van lifing. It's like, it's hilarious to see how the most tech people are some of the most analog seeking. Like the OpenAI founder, Sam Altman, he's like, the best productivity hack I have. And he doesn't mention ChatGPT as the best productivity hack he has, is a little paper notebook in his pocket. It's like Mark Zuckerberg, he's trying to get us all to use VR. And his favorite device is a little e-ink tablet. And Steve Jobs didn't allow his own kids to have iPhones or iPads until they were 17. So it's kind of interesting, right? Like the people who are most in technology are the most running away from it in so many areas of their life. Like
Yeah. It's like I have a pain and regenerative therapy clinic, right? And we're always trying to like figure out ways to help people heal better, deeper. Can we regenerate tissues better? And like, when you look at least half of the technology that's come out in the recent like progression of this world, a lot of it is to trick our body into thinking that it's back in the natural environment. Like you think of PEMF, are you familiar with that therapy? Like most of what that's supposed to do is kind of teach our body that it's like back in the electromagnetic rhythm of what the earth and ground would do to us. And like cryotherapy, we're supposed to get cold sometimes, and our body's supposed to figure out how to heat us up. Sauna, like there's times where we're supposed to get hot, and our body's got to figure out how to dump that heat and keep blood flow and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, we've got this new technology that's awesome. And it's like, well, we're kind of just taking a step back to where we used to be and teaching our body like we still live in the natural world. We're still here.
Reminds me of people who get like obsessed with different like fancy machines in the gym. And at a certain point, they just declare bankruptcy and it all, and just do like body weight exercises and kettlebell and push-ups, and like, like come back to like the basics that just like, or time tested. And I think that's
How,
what natural is it's time tested.
yeah.
It's not some human trying to be clever and figuring it out. It's Mother Nature over a long, 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 long period of time. So,
Were you always trying to kind of think in this term of like, how do we balance this? Was that a motivation along the way? Did you ever end up with like a frustration at some point that led you to starting daylight? How'd you end up here?
yeah, I really like this question because in many ways it is the central principle behind like what daylight is is meant to be and what we'll could do going forward. But it certainly didn't come from like a place up on high. It came from me realizing I was not applying any of its principles in my own life, and how much I was paying the price for that. So in my own life, I was like, um, yeah, to just give a slight amount of history, I was just like obsessed with like optimization and like life hacking and like trying to get more productive and like make everything like more efficient. And so like when it came to, I was like the opposite of like natural. I was like natural is lame. That's just like, they didn't have technology in the past, so they had to do the natural thing. But what the heck is natural? Like, is a dog natural? We like took a wolf and bred it? Like, no, everything involves man's interventions. Like, people are being romantic. Like, I'm gonna just figure out the best way to do things. So I was like, food. Technically, the point of food is just to get some amount of macro and micronutrients, like if I could like inject that stuff directly into my small intestine, like maybe that's the most efficient way to do it. And so I started to like try to think about like how to optimize the amount of time I spent eating per day and the amount of like effort it took to prepare it. And so I like rationalized that like one meal a day, would be the best way to save time and eat better. And I would try to eat like beans because it was the best, calorie per dollar and protein and this and everything was just this like optimization. Like I would read this blog called Lifehacker all the time, and I would have like 500 different Chrome extensions and all these different apps to remember to-dos and learning. Long story short, I was just like in theory supposed to be very efficient, and in practice, I was fucking miserable. I was just so depressed and like dissociated and kind of just broken and no natural rhythms and sleeping at 5 a.m. and like groggy and tired and just a very tight, tense, anxious version of myself. And it was fascinating because I had optimized the hell out of it and I was an absolutely creaky foundation. And
Do
so,
you not to completely derail this, but do you know Brian Johnson, the like blueprint guy?
yeah, yeah.
That's one of the questions I have like around all the stuff that he's doing is like, is this over focus on optimization of like every little piece? Like we're human. I think somewhere in ourselves it knows like you're doing all this, but you're not like your purpose, your core reason for being here is not being achieved. I don't quite know how to say that, but what it is. But I think somewhere in us, our body knows, like, yeah, it's not going to work. You can't cheat it. I don't know. What's your thoughts on
Well,
on
I
that
think
whole side of things? Obviously, you've experienced it on some level.
right. I think you're super onto there, something there, which is like the modern world is all focused on parts. And it's like how to turn the knobs on those parts, right? And it's like and let's analyze something, let's break it down to its parts, and let's optimize all of it. And the whole point of like when we were hunter gatherers or back in earlier days is it's not parts based thinking, it's like holistic thinking. That's what natural is, right? You like include the animals and the plants and then the temperatures and the spirits, and it's like everything is understood as part of an ecology, everything's understood as part of a system. And I think that is kind of the great miracle of the modern age is because we were able to reduce things down to parts, we could control variables and do double blind testing and figure certain things out. But just like every good thing, we almost take it too far to the point it's a bad thing. We've just taken that so far. And yeah, and I think Brian Johnson is like the perfect example of this like parts reductive left-brained optimization gone wrong. Um, because I don't know. I think he's gonna like look like a beautiful zombie at the end of it. And like, what's the definition of a zombie? It's technically alive, but you're just like, there's something friggin' missing there, dude. Like, you're not like your soul is not alive.
Yeah.
And like that to me is what Brian Johnson is creating. Is like, look, I'm gonna live until I'm 120, and yeah, you're a zombie living until 120. And so, the analogy that also helped click this for me is my partner would talk about. It's like you can't go to like every religion and learn their best mantra and like figure out the best series of ways to get enlightened based on like I'm going to say this mantra from this, I'm going to say this mantra from that. Like it can't be done in parts, right? Like you need to fully embody a certain devotion to something. So even if you're just picking one system and it's not the absolute best of every single thing because it's something holistic, because all the parts work together, and it's been kind of time tested in that sense, you actually could get so much more juice out of it, fulfillment,
Right.
faith, whatever it may be. And so I think it's a similar thing. When we're saying natural, it's you're taking the whole thing rather than all these little parts.
How old were you whenever that was going on? When you were kind of in your quote unquote optimization period?
From grade 9 until like a year or so after college.
Okay.
That was like the
What was the like for you if you go back to that time? Like what was the like okay, this is broken. Like I've got to alter my directions. Was there a moment where that happened or was it just a collection of events? How'd you come to that realization like I got off path?
It's so emotional. I feel like if you asked me this tomorrow, I'd give you a different answer, and like there'd be a bunch of it. But what's coming up right now is where there was like a week in college where I had to like hand in some essay, and I would just get so distracted when I was on my computer, and I would just be like stimming all the time, and I'd be opening up new tabs and looking up things. I I had an essay that I had to hand in. It was like a final term paper. And so the way I handed it in on Monday is I sent the Google Doc link to the professor, but I didn't share them to it. And so later on Monday evening, they're like, hey, thanks for submitting it. By the way, you didn't give me access. Can you give me access? I'd only done like 20% of the paper. I like purposefully didn't give them the permission. And so that entire week, I was like, okay, it's just going to take you 3 hours. Just write this thing. I just like stayed up like all night, almost every single night with like 400, 600, 700 tabs on my computer, just like procrastinating and avoiding and like distracting myself from like writing this thing. And I just remember my eyes were in so much pain. My sleep schedule was completely bonked. And I just felt terrible. I just felt like whatever willpower, intention, ability to set my mind to something and do it was completely gone. And so I just like from a self-esteem and like a trust in my own will point of view, it just felt completely destroyed. And so the end of that week, I didn't even end up submitting the thing. I ended up submitting it at the like end of the summer or something. It just I don't know, just on every plane, like physically, mentally, like soul wise, I just felt like so smashed by my relationship to a computer and my relationship to trying to like optimize everything, but the actual foundation underneath was totally rickety.
Yeah.
It was
What
just like,
did
oh my.
what was like after that? Did you go on like I'm interested whenever most people are there right now, right? Like, I mean, I say most people. I saw a study. I think the average person is on their phone right now 3 hours a day. Is that? Do you know the data on that? It's something like that, right?
It might actually be more than that these days, especially after
That's
COVID.
absurd. So most people are there. Like I remember, I have a writing coach when I was working on my book, and one of the things he would tell people to do is take their phone and put it in a little like kitchen safe. You know, it's
Oh,
supposed to be
yeah.
like you put the pie in and kind of you
Right.
set a timer on it. And you can't open it. People had so much anxiety putting their phone for like 20 minutes. Like put a phone in the thing and it's locked away from you for 20 minutes, and people were like, "Oh God, I can't do it. I can't take it. I can't focus. Like, what if something happens?" Like, it just this like physical response to taking that away. And we would talk about it, like, okay, you need to like, let's put a hold on you writing this book. We got work to do. Like we got some issues in here that need to get resolved before you start trying to like get back to this. But it was so interesting as a group for us to realize like, oh no, I'm not addicted to technology. I don't have any issue with that. You know, I'm like, yeah, I check my phone every 30 seconds, but that's okay. Like that's all of us. That's my contact. That's my information. Did like for you personally, did you have to go through a detox phase before you came out to like kind of where you're at? Like, okay, maybe there's a coexistence that is healthy.
Yeah, I wish there was like a very clean hero's journey where I'm like, I figured it all out. I put it beside me. Like, I'm way
Right.
better. Uh, in a way, there's still a struggle. There has been a struggle, but yeah, the kind of like getting out and getting a lot better. I spent 2 years after graduating from college, kind of backpacking around the world, and trying to, yeah, figure out what is my relationship to like what is my relationship to everything? What's my relationship to my body? What's my relationship to self-worth? What's my relationship to like progress for the world?
Yeah.
What's my relationship to technology? What's my relationship to having an impact? And so I spent 2 years like being like, dude, I have no idea what like leads to a good life. And like I'm somebody who has spent their life and wants to spend their life like inventing things that are helpful for people. I don't know what's helpful for people.
Yeah.
I don't even know what's helpful for myself. If I can't be happy or healthy, like who am I to go try to do this for others? So I spent 2 years trying to understand myself and live away from all the overstimulation. Like it's funny you talk about, a trip to London and things like that. Like I spent time in the rice farms in northern Vietnam um, and Iran and Burma and Russia, Indonesia, India, the Himalayas, Nepal. Like spent yeah, almost 2 years going all over the place, and it was crazy. Some of these places, I don't think they have the same like cancer requirements. So like you can be in the middle of nowhere and get amazing 4G. I was like, okay, so in America, you don't even get this good 4G in the middle of nowhere.
No.
So I was like, damn, I'm still finding myself distracted on my phone or on my laptop. Like, what the heck? I'm in a beautiful place. And so one thing I learned at that time is like, stop trying to like solve it here. Stop trying to solve it with like willpower. Like, stop trying to solve it by exerting so much. Like, be clever. And so, like, design your environment. And so, a lot of the times in which I was able to kind of detox or allow my nervous system to calm down and have the weeks to like really start settling and getting back into natural rhythms was when I was like truly like away from all internet and all I had was like my Kindle or a paper journal or something like that. And I was forced to find a way to let go. Like I designed my environment such that I couldn't stim, I couldn't escape and distract myself. And so that ended up being like a pretty powerful lesson, which is sometimes you can just change the circumstances around you to help you be the better version of yourself versus like beating yourself up and whipping yourself to try to do it. And
Yeah.
so that also like really, yeah, that's also become one of the core principles for what I've pursued since, which is environmental design. Like don't just design objects, don't just design tools, like figure out how to design environments. And often that means half of the value you're providing is knowledge, like where to go, how to sit down, what music to put on, what to put away, what to hide. And so the example I think of is like cookies in the top cupboard versus on the countertop. You can still have cookies in your house, but it's like dramatically different behavior. No difference in your willpower.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what's that applied to everything else that can be?
Yeah, I love like Ramit Sethi. He talks about like use those moments of willpower to kind of, he's talking about it from a finance standpoint, but he's like, look, don't trust yourself to be motivated and disciplined every day with in terms of finance. Like do it, like 2 days out of the year, but on those 2 days, design a system that even whenever you have low willpower, the system still runs in the right direction. We talk about that from a health perspective. Like, yeah, my mom is like, "Oh, I don't have the motivation to wake up and work out." I'm like, nobody has the motivation to wake up and work out. Like every morning I wake up, I'm like, no, I'm not going to work out today. Like it's cold outside, it's shit, and then my second alarm goes off and basically says, the stop being a bitch, get up and go. And I like roll out of bed and I go work out. I'm like, that's not motivation. That's just like setting up a system and an environment that creates the ability for discipline, even in low motivation. So I love that idea. I think it's probably harder for people to do sometimes, or maybe they don't know what to do in those moments where they're like, okay, y'all are making sense. Anjan, this makes like I wanna start to get back to that place where I don't feel like I'm getting pulled everywhere, and I'm checking my phone, and then I'm checking my calendar, and I'm checking my tablet, and then I get to the office and I'm on the computer, and I'm going checking email, and then I'm jumping to all these other things. What do I do whenever I am motivated to create a better environment for me? What's your answer to that?
Um, it's moving it from having to constantly make decisions to just like making a decision once. Like what I mean by this is like if I'm just like sitting in my room trying to like, I don't know, write an essay I'm procrastinating on. If I have my phone near me or if I'm on my MacBook, I have to constantly be making the decision to like focus on it. Because always I have another tab with ESPN or whatever, Twitter or this, or my phone has got Slack messages or emails coming through and pinging and binging and bobbing. And I'm like, nope, stay, nope, stay, nope, stay. And that I find it's so much easier to fail at. Versus I make one decision to like go to a nearby coffee shop, um, and I either leave my phone behind or put it at the bottom of my backpack underneath my stuff. And then all I bring is, the daylight computer that we created, and all it has on it is my essay. So I have a little setup with it with a keyboard, and so I can either pick my nose, I can order my third coffee, or I can actually do the thing I need to. But I don't need to constantly be making a decision of, oh, don't check Twitter, oh, don't do this, because I've constrained the environment to all I can do is pick my nose, get a coffee, or write the damn thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so that to me is like this pre-commitment, this like having to only make the decision once. That's been one of the core ways.
Yeah, that you're saying this. I'm trying to think of like times where I've done this in my life where it actually worked. I feel like I've failed at it a few times, but whenever I was in like actual deep book writing state, I initially had my computer in my office, which was in my house, and it was like just 2 rooms away from the bedroom, 100 feet away from my kitchen, and it's like I would go there and I might work like 20 minutes, and then it's like, oh, I feel I need to drink some water, and I'd walk to the kitchen, and then in the path to the kitchen I'd see some mail, like, oh shoot, I wonder if that bill got paid, and I'd grab that, and it's like very quickly my 4-hour block of writing turned into like maybe I got 30 minutes. So I moved my computer outside. We have like a little outdoor kitchen. There's nothing in there. If I have to go do something inside, I have to walk like across the yard to come back inside. And it was like, I don't have to write, but you got to be in that room for 4 hours. And so it was like, you get in there, and I wouldn't bring my phone back there with me. I'm like, look, it's 4 hours. If something burns down in 4 hours, like, sorry, I think that in this conversation, that's the most effective thing I can think of that I did in terms of like environmental constraints that really helped me a lot in terms of taking some of these things off my plate. Do you have something similar like that? Whether that be like building business or meetings or anything in that world?
For the beginning of the project, because I was trying to like research the hell out of some of these. I was reading a lot of science papers trying to figure out what were the best techniques and technologies to pull together. Um, it's essentially me in a stack of PDFs, and so yeah, I would try my best to find a way to like sit outside and leave my phone behind and everything. All I have is a stack of PDFs. But that's kind of where I wanted to build something better because the existing things sucked, and I would do everything to quote unquote set up the environment, but if what I was taking out was an iPad, I couldn't really see the screen. And like I still had some stupid game downloaded on it,
Yeah.
whatever. Like even if I didn't have the internet, Safari had a couple tabs loaded that would, pull me away. So,
So this we're gonna circle this back to daylight because I got married last year and we went to Greece on our honeymoon, and our goal there was like once we get set up, no phones, like bring paper books, let's like truly take this 2 weeks and like just be together and like decompress, right? And we accomplished that very, very highly. It's the most disconnected I've been in 15 years of running a business, all that stuff. Like I didn't check email, didn't do any of that stuff. But I brought an iPad with me to read because I was like, I brought 2 or 3 books, but we're trying to travel light. We were kind of hopping around Greece. I'm like, I'm not going to bring 7 books with me and fill a whole book sack up, right? I'm just taking up too much space. So I'm gonna download the books on my iPad, and it's not connected to the internet. So like I'm just gonna read on that. And we'd be inevitably sitting on a beach, and it's like sunny, and Sarah has like we couldn't get a daylight. I'll put that out there, but she has like one of the little like Kindles or something like that. I forget what exactly one it is, but she's sitting there reading, and I'm trying to read on my iPad, and it's like I've got the brightness all the way up, and it's running through battery, so it's hot. And I'm sitting there, I've got this thing on my lap, and it's like burning me up, and I can barely read the pages. I was like, okay, like I just want a book right now. I just want a paper book right now. But it's like it's kind of where you're talking about. It's like we had all the intentions to have this stress-free thing. And at least once a day, I would kind of get a little bit aggravated that I didn't have a better technological solution to this problem that I ended up with. So, with that, like, let's talk about some of the technology that's out there now in terms of like these kind of, what is the technology that makes it look like a paper ink? What is that?
yeah, give a bit of context, I finally just got so frustrated. I came back from the 2 years of backpacking, and I'm like, I could be in the most pristine place in the world, and this thing can still sabotage me. Like, there's something off about the way modern computers are made. They're miraculous, but there was nobody to kind of sit down and be like, what the heck are we doing, guys? Right? Somebody made something, the next guy improved it a little, and they kind of, oh, like, I need to do this to make it better for movies. I need to do this to make it better for games. Oh, I need to add notifications to make it good for messages. And so it's just kind of this cesspool that everybody threw stuff into that's got this like incredible technology, but it's not very optimized for human health or for human productivity or mental health. And so I just kind of asked myself the question, if I could learn the best science, the best wisdom around physical health, around nervous system, around circadian rhythms, about our relationship to light, ergonomics, EMFs, around mental health, how to not be distracted, addicted, how to actually get things done, maybe you could redesign a computer to kind of be way more aligned with the human. And so that's where I set off. And my first instinct was I learned a lot around how light matters so much for determining overall health and for setting mood. And so I was like, holy crap, the blue light of a computer, I didn't quite realize how much of what I was struggling with could be implicated and traced back to that. The screwed up sleep, the melatonin suppression that comes from blue light, the overstimulation. And so when I'm away from it, I'm craving something that, stimulates my dopamine system the same way that the blue light does. All the circadian dysregulation that, shows up with your
And
metabolism, with your energy.
hormone balance that goes with it, the cell health and self communication. I'll spare everybody my soapbox on that, but I
Yeah,
love I'm picking up what you're putting down.
yeah, you could explain it even better than me. So I was like, okay, what we need to start with, if the goal here is to kind of redo computing to be healthier, let me start with light in the display. And the main goal would be to create a computer display that doesn't emit blue light, that doesn't have flicker. I'm happy to get into what flicker is or how it matters. And you can use it outside in the sun. So you can actually be with natural light. And so the core invention that took almost 3 years to go from idea to something working in my hand was to make a new display that did this. And funny enough, the way to do it is to mimic natural objects, is to kind of go to be more natural. The reason you can't see the iPad in Greece where you were is because it's not trying to be natural. It's not trying to be part of the environment. It's not trying to be part of nature. It's competing,
Yeah.
right? It's trying to be bright and be colorful and this. And guess what? You cannot compete with the sun. So you're
No.
totally maybe okay inside under fluorescent lights, but good luck competing with the sun. And so to me, I was like, oh, what makes, a paper book what it is it's not competing with its environment. It is utilizing it as part of the environment. So the sun is bouncing off of it, and therefore you're able to see it, right? Versus your iPad, which is the sunlight is now out competing the iPad light. It doesn't
Right.
work. It's not because it's not bouncing or reflecting the light the same way an analog object did. And so there was essentially a really um, uh, kind of niche research area in computing that's called how do you make analog or reflective or paper-like displays that kind of mimic paper. And then what you're trying to do is move the black ink around so it can change from page to page. It can, if you're in a Google Doc, it can scroll. But essentially, the white of the computer display is no longer a flashlight, shining light. It's a reflective material like paper, which can bounce light. And then you just move the black ink around. Um, and so if you know the Kindle, any of these e-ink products, they're kind of like the only manifestations of that right now. Otherwise, everything is a flashlight display,
Yeah.
what you find in your iPad or MacBook. Um, and so I was like, this is exactly what I needed. This is an analog-like natural computer display. It's blue light free, it's flicker free. You can use it outdoors in the sun. It doesn't strain your eyes. It's easy on your nervous system. It just feels calmer. It's not like you're looking at
Yep.
a screen. The problem is, it is so damn slow. It is totally fine for Harry Potter, where you're flipping a page once every 2 minutes. But if you try to use it to make a phone, to make a tablet, to make a monitor, the actual refresh rate of the display, how laggy it is when you do any action, is so slow. It is not viable or practical.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's just been relegated to kind of some note taking or as an e-reader. And so what I spent 3 years on and basically involved me resurrecting these old Japanese technologies that nobody had quite put together. That had recently, there were some better material science techniques that made it much more viable. Um, Basically, spent 3 years putting that together and created something that's as fast as an iPad or your iPhone or this or that. And so suddenly, this category of analog, paper-like, reflective displays um, was viable. And so that's what daylight is kind of this, we call it live paper. It's like a living piece of paper. With this live paper display, we're trying to create like a focused, healthier, um, like not overstimulating distraction for the computer. And so the first product I made was a tablet. It's the iPad you can actually use outside that doesn't strain your eyes or emit blue light, and kind of solves the problems of what I was struggling with my iPad. Um, and then the hope is kind of go from here and make each of the different categories of computing healthier. And so,
It's interesting to me, like you talk about how like the initial computer was made and then somebody improved it, quote unquote, and then somebody came behind them and said like, let's make it better. One of the things I think is like what goal did they start with? And that's going to dictate like what your definition of improvement, of success in that. I think for the most part, the goal has been to make the technology better, to keep people on the technology more. We could kind of get into nuances with that, but basically that's been the goal of their improvement. You coming at it from like a completely different sector of, what success would look like in terms of improving this technology, is really the difference of kind of, what creates this category is like, no, success for me is not that I can keep people on this thing, is that they can use it and create a better life for themselves. That's a whole different goal than like, how do I keep somebody on if people are on an iPhone 3 hours, how do I make it so nice that they want to be on it 3.5?
it's like the whole Brian Johnson optimization thing again, which is like technology has been just optimizing, so you'll buy it because they're like, look how much the spec is improved. So when you go to Best Buy or Costco, it says I got more RAM than that computer. I got more RAM than this one. Look how many pixels I have. Look at my resolution. Look at the colors. Look at, it's trying to sell you on specs, which is once again back to little parts and knobs that you're trying to turn.
Yeah.
But no one's including on the spec, like, hey, this is going to screw up your sleep. Hey, this is going to completely screw up your circadian health. Hey, this is going to give you headaches, whatever it may be. This is going to make you tired.
Yeah.
And so there's like overemphasis on these numbers and specs and a complete blind eye to the actual like human implications of it. And so, yeah, in a way you could argue it's just like it's a big philosophical shift.
Yeah.
And that was one of the hard parts of doing this is we're trying to convince the manufacturers in Asia to build it. They're like, I don't understand what you're doing. Like we've worked so hard to make computers more colorful and like more saturated and bright, and you're trying to make like a boring computer? Like you're not going to sell anything, dude. And that's the way they're related to it, right? And,
That's awesome.
and so in a way you could say, yeah, they're being cynical, which is like you're going to go for something that's got sex appeal and is flashy, and then once you're on it, we're going to throw these algorithms at you that make us billions and billions of dollars and trillions in market cap that are based on taking as much of your time as possible. And the best part about it is we blame ourselves rather than realizing there's actually a predator, right? Like the analogy here is if you're at a party and there's just like a person, like you're trying to leave, right? You're trying to like, but the person won't stop talking. Do you know that feeling of you're like, dude, you're stealing my like life force, like you're stealing my time. Like I'm trying to get out of here and I'm just stuck. Right? It's like I don't know about you, but like to me it's just like such a horrible feeling that like my life is just draining away because this guy is just like got me. We feel that so strongly and we have such a strong instinct to like get out of it. Essentially, that's what social media is doing all of the time. Right? Like okay, there's no problem watching funny videos for 10 minutes, but it's like the guy at the party who just like won't stop.
Yeah. If it stopped after that, that's one thing, but that's not where it stops. Next thing you know, like 2.5 hours later, you're somehow watching like, somebody trying to toss a coin into a disc player or something. You're like, what have I done for the last 2 hours?
And
What
you
kind of,
don't blame them. You blame yourself, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that's the big thing here, which is like on top of this kind of calm display is an operating system that also tries to like, make harder to do all the more indulgent aspects and puts at the front the more productive aspects, reading, writing, listening to audiobooks, podcasts, sketching.
Did you get a lot of pushback when you started to kind of share this idea from like business stuff? I don't know the history of the company. Did y'all have to like do fundraising rounds and kind of go that route, or was most of the early stages bootstrapped?
Oh yeah, no one would invest in us. I had to spend my entire life savings to get it off the ground and have something. We didn't get a single dollar from somebody until I had something in my hands three years later to kind of show to people, because they were like, "Dude, you're like normal computers are heroin. You're gonna ask people to like cold turkey off that and like like do something that's better for them." They're like, "I will never invest in something that's trying to compete with a drug, right?" And they're like, "You're being too optimistic about human nature." And it was like heartbreaking. It was infuriating. And it was damning of like why the world is the way it is it's so much easier to just be cynical about like human nature. It's so much easier to pander to people, give them candy
Yeah.
than rather than try to give them like, hummus and veggies.
And I don't know what's happened in the last decade. I felt like this was coming where we started to feel like something was wrong. Even young people, like even in like the teenagers, like we'll talk and they're on the higher utilization of technology, but I'll get some of them in my office sometimes, and you can kind of see like there's a fatigue with it that was starting to happen now. I think we're paying lip service to that because when you look at the numbers, like we're still increasing time on all these devices. But do you think there's a little bit of like this kind of came at the right time where people were more open to it? Like if this was a decade ago, you'd have been pushing the boulder up a much steeper hill.
Yeah, I mean, I started this 6 years ago and we only launched this summer. So in a way, I was like, I,
You've gotten up a few hills since then.
but yeah, I think it's like you just like enough is enough, right? Like at a certain point, your nervous system can't take it anymore. At a certain point, you're just like exhausted enough. And so I do find it fascinating that like Gen Z and like the youngest generation are like the ones who are most, yeah, there's a lot of screen time, but there's also like all these early trends of like going back to analog. Like point and shoot cameras are like really cool now, and like disposable cameras at parties are like how you take photos, and
Yeah.
candles are making like a return. Like people like show like vibey videos on TikTok of their house, like candles are coming back. It looks so much more vibey than just like a fluorescent light. And so I find it fascinating that there is this counter reaction to like enough of the illusion, enough of the digital, enough of the fake, because that's what the digital is,
Yeah.
right? It's fake.
Right.
Let's get back to things that are tactile, that are emotional, that are real, that are natural.
Yeah.
I don't think that's just a fad. I think we'll find a
I
way,
hope
like, I
not.
don't think we'll be Luddites. I think we'll find a way to better integrate both.
Yeah.
And that's what a good life is, right? It's about integration. It's about synthesis.
Yeah.
It's
Like making these advances in technology give us an opportunity to experiencing more like life interaction and not like those things be the interaction. I think that's the real goal for me is like, could technology get to a point where it allows you to have more one-on-one time with family or have more like connected dinners where you're not having to go through stuff and like all the problems with getting those things set up, technology helps you navigate that. But then we have to, I think it's a double-edged sword. Like we have to have the discipline to like use that extra time for real life moments and like notice those things. But kind of what we were saying earlier, we also have to create the tools that don't distract us during those moments. So it's like this, there's like these, there's two prongs to achieving that.
totally agree. Like for me, the dream would be in Costco, instead of it showing off all the random specs, it would talk about, this is gonna help you spend more time with your kids because you're not gonna get addicted. This is gonna help you with your sleep. You're gonna spend more. Like it actually talks about the human
Yeah.
impacts of what this thing is, and it's willing to take a bet on it, right? Like if it doesn't do this for you, like return it. Like this, we and man, like I would so want to be in that world where you're actually held to what matters
Yeah.
versus all these like things that are fanciful but actually don't correlate to your life getting better. And the hope of technology, I think, is not to be a panacea and solve all your problems. It's to not sabotage you. And so your inner work, your own inner journey can actually like have results. And so I think it's beautiful that you point out it's not just the outside external changing of technology, it's got to be also the internal,
Yeah.
like you getting to better health, your nervous system, meditating, whatever, like your mindset changing.
Along the way, I mean, if you spent all of that, there had to be times where you were like, man, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Like, what did you do during the times of doubt during that time? Were you working? Was this your soul? Like, hey, I'm just burning through what I have. I have that much faith that people are that obviously we know they need it, but that people are going to actually buy it. How'd you handle the doubt during those 3 years?
We were near bankruptcy 3 times, and at one point I literally just had no more money. We didn't declare bankruptcy, functionally bankrupt, so it was brutal. And I don't know if it was like I'm so persistent and that's why. Like maybe maybe that is what it is, but some of it I think was just like a stubbornness, right? Like I can't give up on this because then I'm kind of admitting that the world is the cynical place, right? It is not this place that wants things that are better. And who knows, like whether it wasn't clear whether I would be able to like invent something that would work. It wasn't clear whether I'd be able to get into production. So like I get the skepticism, but it was almost ideological. Like if my thing could get one more step along, it was like, oh, you guys are wrong about the world. People do want things like this. You know, like the universe will kind of will it. And I think that was the thing that kept me going at each time is this was me, uh, me trying to say the world is not what all you cynical people say it is, and its survival is almost like,
I love it. So when did y'all first drop the first Daylight tablet, first Daylight computer?
just a couple months ago, this summer.
And
So
then how fast did that sell out?
in a couple weeks, yeah, it was pretty insane, given the journey to get here and
Yeah.
the reception that was there. So it was like very validating, given how many skeptics there along the way and all the no's we got. And gosh, it was like we may have talked to 300 manufacturers and visited 70 of them, and only one of them said yes to us. And so, you know, now all like a bunch of manufacturers reaching out to us, and
Of course.
it's uh, it's
So
surreal.
how did that? I mean, we don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but how did that feel? Were you able to take a moment and be like, okay, like we're like obviously we have much larger goals, but like we're here. Like, did you take a trip? Was there a moment that you got to sit and like kind of appreciate fighting through all these obstacles? How did you handle that?
It wasn't as much celebration as I would have guessed. I would have thought there'd be a lot of like, fuck yeah, I proved them wrong. Like, hell yeah, look at this. This is gonna be real. I think instead more it was like, do you know where like you go for like a long hike and you finally get back to your tent? It's only when you like take your backpack off and you take your shoes off, like you feel how tired you are,
Yeah.
and you're just like, holy crap. It was almost like that. Like I've been fighting and fighting and fighting for so long, and it's almost like I didn't even allow myself to feel like how intense of an experience it was and how tiring it was. It was almost like I could finally breathe for the first time in like in 6 years and put that backpack down.
Yeah.
And just like that intensity that I've kind of almost was like, like pushing away, kind of all hit me at once. So
Do you journal?
yeah, I do.
Do
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Like, were you journaling all along, like all through this whole process?
yeah. That's one of the main reasons I wanted the daylight too, is I wanted something I can, journal by hand on that felt like paper. I didn't want
Yeah.
something to feel like a screen. That's kind of why we created this case that's made of wool. So it's something that's a little more cozy and comfy to have in my hands when I
Yeah.
journal. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to look back on this journaling.
Yeah. My entrepreneurial brain like wants to get access to that. Like going through that. Like, I mean, look, any entrepreneur listening to this, about half our audience is like kind of practitioners of some sort, and a decent portion of those are entrepreneurs. Like we're all there at some point in time. You face doubts. You get in these moments. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if I'm going in the right path. I don't know if the reception's going to be there. Dot dot dot. Right. And it's like, how do we talk to ourselves during that moment? How do we overcome that stuff? And we can have theories around it, but to have some boots on the ground aspects of it would be a very fun thing. Once y'all are like a $1 billion company, you're like, all right, that'll be part of the Virgin brand book that comes out on Anjan and Daylight.
I think that's where the question about like the journal is such a good one, because it's so easy to romanticize or like repress the thing and kind of, remember the after the fact, like we made it, and who knows, we may die in a year and nobody wants daylights, and so on, so on. But I think the journal is so important, because then you see the days where the entries, they have no hope. It's literally just like, this is stupid, this is going to entirely fail, like I'm an idiot, I suck at this, like blah 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 blah. And there's no like, there's a silver lining, like I will keep going. It's just like, no, I am, there's no chance. Like I don't know why I'm doing this, I'm stupid, like this is literally stupid, like you should take care of yourself and give up in this. And it's crazy to see that,
Yeah.
because if you asked me on that day, I would like, it's like I was not persistent on that day. And so I think there's a dynamic of, I quit so many times, but I never gave up.
Hmm.
I would stop working on it for 2 weeks, sometimes even as much as, a month, but I'd always find a way to somehow come back to it. And so, yeah, during some of those tough times, even the
Yeah,
two
I think
together.
that's the good stuff. Like I was at a conference completely separate, but with Damon John, and we were talking about FUBU, and he was like, I quit over 10 times, and we went bankrupt three. I was like, holy crap! Like the amount of people at that point who would have said, all right, I'm not cut out for this. Like I'm not, I'm going to get a job. Like this is not working. Is astronomical. Almost every single person who got to that point would have just given up. And he quit a bunch of times, to your credit, what you said there. But he never gave up. Like he kept like kind of circling back to it. And I was like, that's okay. That's the difference. That's why you are where you are, because the vast majority of people would have absolutely completely given up on that after that many failures. Um, I don't know. I'd love if you've given it enough thought. How do you do that? Like how do you hit those types of adversity and kind of like, okay, take a step back, but then still come back to it and try to achieve something?
Maybe a silly answer, but I think some of it is like not some like glorious quality. It's just like inertia. Like this is all you've been thinking about every morning you wake up, at night before you go to bed, in your showers, sometimes even when you're going for a walk with your partner. Like this is, if you do it for long enough, it just is so woven into your being. And I wasn't doing this to make money. I wasn't doing this because of some external reason. It's like the things I'm most passionate about in my life. It's the things I've most struggled with. So it didn't take a lot of motivation to like have that be part of my being. It was part of my
It was
being,
a pull, yeah.
right? And so I think if it was like, this is a great idea, it's going to be successful, you can maybe keep at that for a bit of time, but it's so much harder to keep at that forever because you're like, "Oh, it's not worth it. I
Yep.
can't do this."
Yep.
And so it was essentially my being. And so even when there was weeks where, I stopped working on it and things like that, I couldn't help but think about it because I would
Yeah.
run into these same problems in my life. I would, go back and be like, I hate my Kindle, or, oh, I'm writing all these notes by hand and I can't find them, or I can't search them and this. And so there was enough just like contact with real life that reminded me why I'm doing this. Like, enough me forgetting my blue light blockers that reminded me, oh, like, yes, there's a reason
Golly.
to do this.
Yeah, that's great. You mentioned like that y'all the operating system is designed kind of based on that to somewhat protect you from yourself a little bit. Explain that. Explain that a little bit more. How does that functionally work in the computer?
We mostly focused on the hardware, so we're super, super, super early on the software. That's where we intend to build a lot. But just to give you like a couple vignettes of like how we're building it. So there is this like very seminal understanding in um, in computer science that if you're above these certain thresholds in latency or delay, the amount of people who like do an action goes dramatically down. And so where this was like pioneered was like in e-commerce. They were like, if the checkout page takes like more than, 1.2 seconds to go, you have like a massive drop off, right? Versus if it took 300 milliseconds to load. It's like an irrelevant amount of time. But you have these like insane changes in what people are willing to do, whether they consciously know it or not. And so much of the psychology around computers and what keeps it addicting is how do you reduce the amount of time things take to get under those inflection points. So you kind of just like get, sucked into it. We're doing the opposite, where we're like, we don't need to be like prescriptive, right? We don't need to be like, this is good or this is bad. We can kind of all agree that TikTok's a bit addicting and this and that, but I think it's annoying if somebody else is telling you what's good or bad. I think what's cool is I can have a little opinion by putting the cookies in the cupboard versus on the thing. And so we're using that psychology of these inflection points in time in reverse. So on our system, let's say you want to go to something that's a bit more distracting, you can go to it, but it'll make you wait 20 seconds before it loads, right? And if you go to it
I
again,
love it.
it'll take 24 seconds. And the basic idea is if there really is a strong intention to do it, you'll wait 24 seconds.
Yeah.
But by definition, if the intention is not strong enough, You will not. You like 24 seconds doesn't even sound like a lot. It is a miserable amount of time when you're trying to click it. So most of the compulsive behavior, most of the I don't even know why I'm clicking on this, kind of goes away. And honestly, I don't know why Apple and so on doesn't do something like this. My bet is because they make money from you being addicted to stuff.
Yeah.
They do well if you're stuck in that
So
system.
is the opposite also true? Like if I want to click into like like the writing app, that one's like bam, like it's there.
Exactly. That's the stuff that's the most easily accessible. Yeah, exactly. You got it. We even have buttons on the tablet where if you click the button or double click it, it immediately takes you into a blank page. So you don't even need to, like the device can be off. You double click that button. You don't even need to see any of the software.
Anything
It
else.
immediately takes it. Because that's what I
Brilliant.
like about a paper notebook or a typewriter. So we're trying to replicate some of that.
Yeah, I love that. And then from like a reading perspective, how are people doing that? Are they kind of tapping into some of the current, like whatever Kindle apps or like how do they get access to, the books and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so on our thing, like the Kindle app works, almost most of your favorite apps will work on it. So even Audible, you can listen to audiobooks, you can read Google Docs, you can read newsletters, you can, go read the New York Times. So kind of all the things you want to read are available on it. And you can also use our apps and so on to send PDFs and links and things like that you want to read. And we try to make it a pretty nice experience. You can annotate on it. I really like reading with a little pen in my hand and writing comments. So
Yeah, that's one you've hit everything that I think about because like if you look at for lack to not throw this completely off, if you look at one of my books that's like a nonfiction book, I've got little notes all over the place. It's one of the ways that I bring the information. Most of the time, I'm reading. I'm trying to solve some sort of problem that I'm dealing with, whether personally or business or whatever. And like that little jot connects these neurons in a very special way. I think that's really powerful. And so it's one of my issues when you're sitting there in like a tablet reading a thing is like it's a lot to get to the point. Most of them you can do it now, but you got to tap and then you got to tap the thing and then you got to go back to it and then you're done. You got to hit the thing. It's like, whereas you got a book, you're like,
the seamless, yeah.
under there. Right. Man,
We're trying to replicate what you can do on a book.
I
We're
love
trying to
that.
give it a little bit of superpower. So whatever your jots are, they can be searchable. So it can like read your handwriting and it gets better over time. And let's say there's like a paper there that you want to go figure out. You can put a little checkbox and it'll know that's a to do. And then you can go, it'll try to collect those for you. And so like for me, like the act of reading is like mining. You're like mining through stuff to find the nuggets. And so what can we do to better make that process better?
What's the team look like now? What are y'all? What's the company?
We're still pretty small, about 15 people. We're kind of yeah, kind of like not really into bureaucracy. So I'm hoping, by the end of this year we'll be less than 25 or 30. So keep the team small, keep them focused, and a lot
I
of
mean,
it.
y'all have to be are y'all at kind of this like is it just production that's stopping like fulfillment? Is that where the constraint is?
Exactly. Yeah, because just like building a computer is complex, and most of the people who do it, they sell millions of things. The scale is immense. It's tough. We have very little leverage with the manufacturers, given our scale in the beginning is small. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
So we kind of need some funding to better convince the manufacturers so we can unlock production. Because yeah, that's what's happening right now. Is every time we have units to sell, we're sold out, and then we're we're trying our best to try to create more of them. So
Yeah, I love what y'all are doing. This is like after my own heart. My full disclosure, when I said we couldn't get it, somewhere along the way this came across my radar, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I remember going to the page, and I was like, I should get Sarah one of these, which was gonna be mine, right? That's how marriage works, I think. I think it's the opposite, but uh, um, and then of course, like as things happen, I got distracted, right? And And at some point in time, I circled back to it before we left, and like, hey, you can pre-order and all that stuff. And I was like, um, I kind of lost it. And then when we connected, I was like, oh, like it connected. I was like, holy crap, this is what I was looking at. I guess whenever that initial launch dropped. So it was such an awesome thing to see, like the world kind of put this all together. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's surreal, and I don't know. I think what's most exciting to me is like, kind of proving my theory that like people do want to improve their lives. People do want to not be addicted. We're not choosing to be addicted. Like a lot
Yeah.
of people who said no to us were like, no, people want to be addicted and distracted. I'm like, no way, man. It's just hard to not do it, and especially for your family and for your kids. I feel like that's where there's some of the most excitement for what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Hopefully, for the
sure.
next generation, we can give a healthier computer and not rewire them all to be ADHD and autistic. And
And even small stuff. I was coaching a client, a business client, and I was asking her how her meetings were going, how her one-on-one meetings were going. She was like, they're not great. I was like, well, tell me what you're doing. Like, what are you asking? And she was like, oh, I go through this document. I'm like, that's cool. Like, like, show me the document. She pulled it up on her screen. I was like, so are you printing it out or something? She was like, no, no, no. I'm like, as they tell me, I'm filling out the document. I was like, so you're sitting on your computer while you're doing like one-on-one meetings? She was like, yes. I was like, no, no, like either print it or grab a piece of paper, jot notes, and then come fill it in on your computer. And then we actually, she was like, should I upload it on, I don't know, one of the writing, kind of what we were talking about earlier, like the writing Kindle or, whatever one of those they had access to. I was like, I mean, you can, but I would just write it on paper. Like that seems to be the easiest thing. Cause then, you have it. And within a month, she's like, you have no idea how much better our conversations are. She's like, if you had like videoed these conversations, you would think I was a completely different leader just by me being like, no computer, I'm here, let's talk. I might jot down a few thoughts while you're speaking, but I'm here with you. So like even those types of things, when you talk about kids, like I feel like if we remove some part of what the technology feels like in the way, and now it's like part of that environment, as you said earlier, that could be a really powerful way where it like encourages connection, doesn't block connection somehow. So I like the progress in this field. I think in terms of like being part of that. I haven't thought about it that way of like, can technology be part of the environment instead of like blocking the environment of some sort.
it's the least technology possible. It's just funny because tech companies want to sell you as many gadgets and have your life be as technology filled as possible. And I think of the example of like this African hunter-gatherer tribe where they kept improving technologies, like, their bow and arrow and things like that, but they figured out some combo of like poison on arrows. And for like thousands of years, they didn't improve it because it's like, it's good enough. We can hunt with this and this. And I think there's a way in which technology just keeps trying to improve and try to do it. But the point is, when it helps you do the thing you want to do and it helps you live the life you want to do, it's good enough, right? And so, I don't
Man,
know.
I think daylight's on that path, man. I really do. I think y'all's mission comes from a great place, and that's gonna pull people in and hopefully kind of make them question like, what are they doing? What are they using it for? One of the questions we ask all our guests, Anjan, is if somebody's listening to this and they could do one thing today to improve their health, what would that one thing be?
I think it would, when the sun sets, replace like your fluorescent lights and white LEDs and all your light bulbs and overhead light with warmer, redder lights that are potentially on lamps and salt lamps, and like they're not overhead. Um, I think amongst my friends who I recommend that to, like the difference in like resting and sleeping and just kind of allowing your nervous system to calm down has just been like dramatic. And I think us always being in a parasympathetic place is behind so many problems. The
Yeah,
stress
the That's a great answer. I'll add the compounding. We talk about compounding health loops. Like, what are these little things that create these compounding effects in terms of health? You do that, you improve sleep, you improve immune system recovery, brain health. You have more energy. You have more willpower the next day.
Easier
You
to
do
work
dot
out.
dot 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 dot.
You got a
Yeah.
little more time to journal, whatever it may be. Yeah.
Do you have any lights that you like the most for that type of stuff? Have you done any? I know you've studied this a ton, so
There's so many, and they're mostly all like super good. It's like that's I would love to. There's a guy named Scott Zimmerman. He has these bulbs that are infrared as well. So I like those ones.
gotcha. Have to
Brain
check
power.
those out. Where can people find Daylight? Where can they get on the pre-order list? Where's all the good stuff? Where can they find you online and kind of keep up with what y'all are doing, and maybe sometime in the years to come see some journal excerpts?
Yes. I feel like there has to be a trend for entrepreneurs in the future to be transparent, because then that's the best way for others to not give up or keep at it at this. So, I love the challenge there. Um, yeah, the main thing, if you go to daylightcomputer.com, if you're interested in what we're doing, and you can place a pre-order deposit. And the way it works is enough people place a pre-order deposit, we're able to put them in a batch and go to the manufacturer and say, hey, there's demand, and then they'll build it for us. So each of you plays an important role in kind of helping us scale this up. And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Daylight Co. And yeah, I'm always looking for new collaborators, people to join the team, partners, influencers, investors, whatever it is. So you can email me at Anjan, Anjan at daylightcomputer.com. Don't be shy. Basically reply to everyone. So that's us. And yeah, maybe we will be back in a bit of time with a phone or a laptop or something else to show you guys.
I love it, Anjan. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the little ripple that you're creating in the world, man. I do. Thanks for the conversation.
Thanks for having me on. And something like this wouldn't happen if the only way we could talk to people is through CNN. So I genuinely believe podcasts and this kind of like alternative media is actually what allows things like this to be possible.
Love it. People, go place your pre-orders. We need this thing. We need this thing in the world. Get out there, sign up. I promise, even if you're trying to take better notes, journals, reading, all of that stuff, it's going to be a better experience for you. So get on there. What is it? Daylightcomputer.com. Love it. Thanks, Anjan.
Thanks, Terry.